too disoriented. This is all crazy.
So picture this. You lock your phone in a drawer, right? You literally take it and hide it.
Oh yeah, out of sight, out of mind. Or so we think.
Right, exactly. You change your computer screen to grayscale. You declare to your family or, maybe just to yourself that this is it. This is the weekend of the great dopamine detox.
The famous modern reset button.
Yeah. You are finally going to reclaim your mind. And yet, 20 minutes later, you find yourself standing in the bathroom just staring blankly at the fine print on a shampoo bottle.
Oh, I've been there, reading the ingredients like it's a gripping novel.
Yes. You're standing there reading about the stabilizing properties of sodium lauryl sulfate, and you're feeling that exact same restless anxiety you felt when you were just doom scrolling on your phone.
Which is wild when you really stop to think about it.
It is. Because why does that happen?
Yeah.
You removed the technology, right? You stripped away all the digital input. So why is the mind still desperately searching for an exit?
It's because we've completely misdiagnosed the actual problem.
And if you are listening to this right now, chances are you know that exact maddening feeling. It's that constant low-grade hum of restlessness.
Yeah, that underlying hum.
The feeling that your attention is constantly slipping through your fingers like sand, and it doesn't matter what productivity hacks you throw at it.
Right. It is an incredibly common modern experience, and honestly, it points to a fundamental failure in how we are trying to solve the problem.
How so? Like, what are we getting so wrong?
Well, we keep treating our minds like smartphones that just have, too many background apps open.
Right.
We think if we just force quit the apps, the battery life will magically improve.
Just close all the tabs and you're good.
Exactly. But that lingering anxiety you feel staring at the shampoo bottle, that suggests the battery isn't the issue at all.
Wow. Yeah, the symptoms just come right back. Sometimes they even feel stronger when the digital noise is actually gone.
Because you're finally left alone with yourself.
Which is terrifying for a lot of us. And that frustrating reality, that's really the launch pad for today's deep dive. We are looking at a genuinely paradigm-shifting essay by Jamie Thornberry.
It's a brilliant piece of work.
It really is. It's titled The Ontological Necessity of Attention, The Illusion of the Dopamine Detox, Why Productivity Hacks Cannot Heal a Fragmented Mind.
That subtitle alone really throws down the gauntlet.
It totally does. And to help us navigate some of the more dense philosophical terrain in Thornberry's work, we actually have a curated stack of visual sources we'll be pulling from as we go.
Which I think is going to be incredibly helpful for visualizing this stuff.
Definitely. So Thornberry's text includes this really fascinating infographic breaking down the concept of ontology, which we'll get into. There's also a really striking illustration of a shattered mirror reflecting all these multiple worlds.
That image is haunting, honestly.
It really is. Then there's this dark, AI-generated image of a human being manipulated by glowing digital strings, and finally, a serene little sketch as an archway from Love Life Light Publishing.
It's a remarkable stack of sources because, Thornberry is arguing something incredibly bold here.
Yeah, lay it out for us. What's the core argument?
The central premise is that our entire society has completely misdiagnosed the problem of modern distraction. We just keep treating it as a neurochemical issue.
Like a glitch in our brain's reward circuitry.
Exactly. We think it's just a biological glitch that can be hacked. But Thornberry argues it is actually an ontological crisis. It's a crisis of our very state of being.
Okay, so our mission today is to take these incredibly dense philosophical concepts and translate them into a really practical understanding of why your mind feels so scattered.
Right, taking it from the abstract to the everyday.
Exactly. We're going to sequence this whole discussion from the root of the problem, like why biohacking your brain is a total dead end, all the way to a profound philosophical path for recovery. A path that prioritizes genuine, deep presence over just trying to be, a more efficient worker bee.
I love that framing. Because efficiency is not the goal here.
Right. So let's unpack this, because Thornberry just comes right out swinging in the introduction of the essay.
Oh, absolutely. Buzz, no punches.
The essay states that the modern discourse around our failing attention spans has been entirely reduced to, quote, neurochemical management.
Right. We talk about it almost exclusively in terms of dopamine now.
Yes. Every YouTube video, every self-help article, it's all dopamine.
Yeah.
And the proposed behavioral interventions, the fasting, the app blockers, the grayscale screens we talked about, they all operate on this underlying assumption that human beings are basically just stimulus processing organisms.
And that phrase right there, stimulus processing organisms, that is crucial to highlight.
Why is that so important?
Because it reveals the implicit anthropology of the entire dopamine detox movement.
Okay, wait, anthropology, like studying ancient ruins.
No. Anthropology in the philosophical sense.
Yeah.
It refers to our underlying baseline assumption about what a human being actually is.
Oh, okay, so how we define ourselves fundamentally.
Right. Think about it this way. If you genuinely believe a human is simply a biological machine designed to seek pleasure and to avoid pain,
Yeah.
then yes, manipulating the inputs and outputs, like restricting the dopamine spikes, that seems like the only logical fix.
You're just tweaking the machinery.
Exactly. You are treating the human mind like a rat in a maze that has just hit the food lever way too many times.
It's like trying to fix a broken compass by just walking slower.
That is a great analogy.
Right, because you might reduce your speed, you might lower the intensity of the wind hitting your face, but you still have absolutely no idea where you are going.
You haven't fixed the navigation at all.
No. You've just changed the velocity of your wandering. You're still lost.
And what's fascinating here is how this whole model operates entirely on mechanism rather than meaning. I mean, just listen to the language we use when we talk about this stuff today.
Like,
We say things like recalibrating reward pathways or optimizing stimulus response patterns or, dopamine fasting. It literally sounds like we are tuning up a car engine or debugging a software program.
it does sound incredibly robotic.
But human attention isn't a mechanical process. It has a deeply moral and, frankly, spiritual dimension.
Okay, so it's not just a battery we drain and charge.
Exactly. Thornberry points out that when you deprive a mind of stimulation through one of these detoxes, you don't automatically unify it. If that mind lacks a telos, which is the classical Greek philosophical term for a purpose, an ultimate aim, or an end, then a detox mind simply becomes a restless mind looking for new ways to scatter itself.
Which brings us right back to the shampoo bottle in the bathroom.
Exactly. The lack of telos leads to the shampoo bottle.
Let me share a slightly embarrassing example of this from my own life.
Oh, please do. We all have them.
So a few weeks ago, I decided I was really going to cultivate my attention. I was going to be present. I put my phone in another room. I sat down on the couch and I put on this classic 3-hour film.
Setting the stage for deep focus.
Right. No second screens.
Yeah.
Just pure cinema. But man, within 20 minutes, I felt this unbearable itch.
So withdrawal kicks in.
It really did. By minute 30, I had paused the movie. I walked into the kitchen, I opened my laptop, and suddenly I was reading the Wikipedia page for the lead actor.
Oh, the Wikipedia rabbit hole. It's dangerous.
It's so bad, because that led to looking up the town he was born in, which somehow led to looking at real estate prices in that town.
Naturally.
And it somehow ended with me shopping for a vintage rug for a hallway I do not even have in my house.
That is incredible. A rug for a non-existent hallway.
Right. And the realization I had was, the phone wasn't the distraction. The distraction was entirely internal. Myself was already looking for an exit before the movie even started.
And that is the perfect illustration of Thornberry's point. The smartphone is really just the most efficient delivery system for the dispersion we are already actively seeking.
So we want to be distracted.
Deep down, yes. The technology scales our distraction. It makes it easier and faster, but it absolutely doesn't create the fundamental desire to flee from the present moment.
Wow, that's a hard truth to swallow.
It is. Thornberry notes that without a clear orientation toward truth or goodness, without that overarching telos you mentioned, efforts to control our attention remain completely arbitrary.
Because we don't know what we're aiming for.
Right. The whole dopamine framework completely neglects the moral dimension of perception. It treats attention as a tool, like a hammer, or a battery you charge up and drain, rather than what it truly is, which is a condition of being.
And the essay points out a really dark irony here, too. By treating ourselves purely in these biochemical terms, we are actually participating in the exact same reductionism that caused the problem in the first place.
Yes, we are reducing our own humanity.
We are literally stripping away our own moral agency. We're telling ourselves, like, oh, I have no free will, my dopamine receptors made me scroll TikTok for 3 hours.
Which is a very convenient excuse, isn't it?
It is. We become complicit in our own dehumanization. We let ourselves off the hook.
And because of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
If you define yourself as a stimulus response machine, you will behave exactly like one. You just surrender the higher faculties of intentionality and discernment.
You just give up.
You abdicate the responsibility of directing your attention toward what is actually meaningful, purely because you've convinced yourself you were just a victim of your own neurochemistry.
Okay, so if the problem isn't biochemical, what actually is it? I mean, this brings us to the absolute core of Thornberry's thesis. The crisis is ontological.
There's that word. Ontological.
Right. Now, for a lot of people, including myself the first time I read it, that word sounds incredibly dense.
Oh, it's very academic.
It sounds like it belongs in some dusty, graduate-level university library, not in a practical discussion about why I can't finish reading a book.
It does sound intimidating,
Yeah.
but it's actually deeply practical once you crack it open.
Let's do that. Let's look at the first visual source from Thornberry's materials to help translate this for the listener. It's an infographic titled Ontology, the Nature of Being and Existence.
It's a very helpful visual aid, honestly, because ontology is notoriously difficult to define without just using more confusing philosophical jargon.
Yeah, philosophers love defining big words with other big words.
They really do. But this infographic breaks the concept down into 4 interacting quadrants. Let's walk through it.
Okay, let's do it. So looking at the image, in the top left, we have concepts, and that's represented by a glowing light bulb.
Right, the realm of ideas.
Then in the top right, it says entities, showing an illustration of the earth, and strangely enough, a cat.
Physical things that exist. The earth, a cat, a coffee mug.
Got it. Bottom left is categories, depicted as a colorful organizational flowchart.
How we group those entities and concepts together.
And finally, bottom right is relationships, showing an arrow connecting an icon of a human to a paw print representing an animal.
Okay, so concepts, entities, categories, and relationships.
It's basically the architectural blueprint of reality, right? It's the study of what things are, how they exist, and how they relate to each other on a really fundamental level.
That is a fantastic way to put it. Yes, a blueprint of reality. Ontology asks the most fundamental question imaginable, which is simply, what does it mean to be? What is the nature of existence itself?
So it's not just about how our brains work, but about what we actually are.
Exactly. So when Thornberry says our modern attention crisis is an ontological problem, the argument is that this crisis strikes at the very core of our existence.
It's not a superficial software bug?
No, it's deep in the hardware of our soul, so to speak. Attention, in this philosophical framework, isn't just a spotlight you shine on different things in a dark room.
Which is how we usually think of it, right? Like a flashlight.
Right, but it's much more than that. It is your active participation in reality.
An active participation.
Yes, to attend to something is to direct your whole self toward an object so that reality can disclose itself to you.
Okay, I want to pause here. I really want to make sure we are grasping the weight of that statement. Because if attention is an active participation in reality, then logically, when my attention is broken, my actual connection to reality is broken.
That's the terrifying implication, yes.
So I'm not just being unproductive at work, I'm literally detaching from what is real.
That is the precise argument Thornberry is making. The essay states that this active participation presupposes a unified subject.
Meaning I have to be whole to participate.
Exactly. You have to be a whole, coherent self to sustain an orientation toward an object. But when the self is fragmented, when it is pulled simultaneously toward competing stimuli, contradictory narratives, and fleeting desires, it loses the capacity for stable attention.
So the person trying to pay attention is actually falling apart.
Right. The actual subject who is trying to do the attending is no longer whole.
Wow. And there is an image from the source materials that Thornberry includes to illustrate this, and it is honestly haunting once you understand this context.
The shattered mirror image.
Yes, it's titled Chaos Shatters. So for the listener, just picture a person standing with their back to us, facing a massive, ornate, floor-to-ceiling mirror.
Like something out of an old mansion.
Exactly. But the mirror has been violently shattered. Shards of glass are just frozen in midair, exploding outward toward the viewer.
And the detail in those shards is incredible.
It's the profound part of the image, because every single shard is reflecting a completely different reality.
They aren't just reflecting the room.
No. One jagged piece shows a bright, sunny nature scene. Another shows a glowing, neon, cyberpunk city. Another shard shows this classical, ancient stone temple. And others are just reflecting wild, abstract, chaotic colors.
It is a stunning visual metaphor for the fragmented self that Thornberry is diagnosing.
It really hits you on a visceral level.
It does. And notice that the person in the image isn't looking at one coherent world that just has a few little distractions in it. Like it's not a unified world with a buzzing phone on the table.
Right, they're literally surrounded by different worlds.
They are being completely bombarded by dozens of fractured, competing realities simultaneously. Their perception isn't just diverted, it is entirely dispersed.
But let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because it's really easy to get swept up in the poetry of a shattered mirror. You know, it's a great metaphor. But isn't this just a very dramatic, highly philosophical way of describing multitasking?
That's a very common critique.
Right. Because we live in a fast-paced world, we have demanding jobs, we have kids, we maintain social lives, we get news alerts about global events. When I am, say, folding laundry while listening to a deep dive like this one, and also keeping an eye on the stove, am I really shattered? Or am I just a busy adult managing a complex life?
That is the crucial distinction to make, and Thornberry actually addresses this directly in the text. Multitasking is doing two or more actions at the same time. Like your example, folding the laundry while listening to the audio.
Right. It's just being efficient.
Yes. That is a functional division of labor. It's a behavioral state. Fragmentation, as defined ontologically, is much, much deeper.
So how is it different?
It's when the actual subject doing the attending you, your core identity, your orientation toward meaning, is divided. It's when your internally coherent framework is broken apart.
Okay, I think I'm following.
You aren't just performing multiple physical tasks, you're being pulled in multiple existential directions.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's the difference between doing two physical chores at once versus having your inner life caught in this violent tug of war.
Exactly. Think about being at dinner with your family.
Oh, this is a dangerous example.
Right. You are physically sitting at the dinner table, but mentally, you are oscillating between the political outrage you just saw on social media 10 minutes ago, the gnawing anxiety about an unread email from your boss, the sudden desire to buy a gadget you saw in a targeted ad, and the guilt that you aren't actually listening to your kid talk about their day at school.
Oof. Yeah, that hits close to home.
Right. You are literally scattered across these different conflicting domains of existence. Your physical presence at the table becomes hollow because your ontological presence is distributed everywhere else.
That is such a powerful way to frame it. The physical presence is there, but the self is missing.
And to explain the mechanics of this, Thornberry introduces a profound concept from classical philosophy, the idea of privation.
Privation. Okay, what does that mean in this context?
Well, if we look at thinkers like Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, they argued that evil or disorder is not a thing in itself. It doesn't have an independent substance that exists on its own.
Like it's not a dark cloud floating around.
Exactly. Rather, it is a privation. It's a lack or an absence of proper order. Think of a shadow.
Okay, a shadow.
A shadow isn't a dark substance that is actively added to a room.
Yeah.
You can't scoop up a cup of shadow. It is simply the absence of light.
The light has been blocked.
Right, or think of a hole in a shirt. A hole isn't a new type of material that was woven in. It is simply the absence of the fabric that should be there.
Oh, wow. Okay, so applying that to our minds. A fragmented mind isn't a brain that has acquired some new negative substance called distraction.
Right.
It's a mind that has been deprived of its natural unity.
Precisely. A fragmented mind isn't functioning in some new alternative mode. It is suffering from a deprivation of wholeness. It lacks the internal coherence necessary to fully engage with reality.
So we're literally missing a piece of ourselves.
Yes, when you look back at that shattered mirror image, the disorder isn't the glass itself. The disorder is the loss of the single unified reflection. The wholeness has been deprived.
That reframes things completely for me. We aren't fighting this invasive species of distraction that has infected our brains. We're suffering from a severe drought of unity.
A drought of unity, that's a beautiful way to say it.
But, I mean, if we are suffering from this deprivation, where is it coming from? We established earlier that the self seeks dispersion, right? We want to be distracted. But Thornberry certainly doesn't let our modern environment off the hook.
Oh, not at all. The essay moves on to argue that we live in an ecosystem that is explicitly, intentionally structured to cause this exact fragmentation.
And the text calls this the architecture of interruption.
Yes, this is where the essay bridges the gap between this deep internal philosophy and a very sharp external critique of our technological landscape.
It's not just us, it's the tools we use.
Right. Digital platforms, algorithmic content feeds, notification-driven interfaces. These are not neutral tools that just happen to be distracting by accident.
They aren't just poorly designed.
No, they are designed from the ground up to maximize engagement through constant, unpredictable interruption. They operate by continually redirecting your attention, which completely prevents the formation of any deep cognitive or perceptual continuity.
This perfectly segues into the third visual source from our stack. And I have to say, this one is an incredibly evocative, almost unsettling AI-generated image.
It's very dystopian.
It really is. It shows a human figure, looks like a young person, standing in the dark, just staring upward, and coming out of their head, stretching up into the darkness, are these glowing neon strings.
Like puppet string.
Exactly like puppet strings. And at the end of the strings, looming over the human in the background, is this massive, shadowy digital entity made entirely of flowing code and data. It's literally a digital puppet master.
It's a very visceral representation of this architecture of interruption. But the most telling part of the image, I think, is what is actually written on those glowing strings.
Right. If you zoom in on the strings, you see icons for various social media platforms mixed in with these floating text alerts. The alerts say things like consensus collapse, fake news, logical fallacy, confirmation bias, and outrage.
Now, this is a really important point to clarify.
Yes, I want to pause right here and make something very, very clear for you listening. Because when we read terms like fake news or outrage, it is incredibly easy, almost automatic, to immediately think of your political opponents.
This is the first place our minds go.
Right, to think of the other side spreading lies and causing chaos. But we have to remain entirely neutral here, because Thornberry's point is absolutely not about which political side is right or wrong.
Not at all.
The point is about the mechanism of the delivery. These labels represent the influx of highly charged, fragmented stimuli. The digital puppet master does not care about your political affiliation. It only cares about plucking the string labeled outrage to yank your attention away from whatever you were focused on.
That is an essential clarification to make. The architecture of interruption uses any content necessary. Left-wing politics, right-wing politics, pop culture gossip, personal drama, tragedy, comedy. It uses all of it to prevent continuity.
It's all just fuel for the fire.
Exactly. The goal of the algorithm is not to inform you. The goal is not to make you a better citizen or a smarter voter. The goal is to keep you perpetually responsive.
Perpetually responsive, so we never actually settle.
Right. You are being conditioned to expect novelty, to abandon sustained effort the very moment friction arises. You are rewarded with a tiny burst of psychological relief for jumping from the heavy string of outrage to the comforting string of confirmation bias, and then maybe to the mindless string of a funny cat video.
And you just loop through them?
Over and over again in a cycle that never resolves.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly terrifying. Thornberry argues that eventually this external fragmentation isn't just something forced upon us against our will, it becomes internalized as a preference.
Yes. The essay states that the individual actually comes to desire the interruption.
We want the puppet strings pulled.
We begin to actively seek it out. And as a corollary to that, we begin to interpret stillness as a form of active discomfort.
It's a profound inversion of our nature. The exact thing we need for mental clarity sustained, quiet attention becomes the very thing we find subjectively intolerable.
It feels physically bad to be still.
It does. Think about waiting in line at the grocery store. 10, 15 years ago, you just stood there. Maybe you daydreamed, maybe you glanced at the weird tabloid headlines, maybe you just observed the people around you.
You just existed in the space.
Right. Now, if the line stops moving for more than 4 seconds, what do? You reflexively reach into your pocket. Standing still, unaccompanied by a digital feed, just alone with your own thoughts, it feels physically uncomfortable. We have been trained to fear the silence.
We have become what Thornberry calls distributed subjects.
Distributed subjects. I like that phrase.
The self is spread thinly across a vast network of stimuli, never fully present in any single act. And when you are distributed that thinly, when you are perpetually responsive but rarely reflective, you lose something critical.
Which brings us to the broader implications of Thornberry's argument, right? We've talked a lot about the individual cost of distraction, the anxiety, the lost focus, but there's a massive moral and societal cost as well.
A huge cost. If you can't pay attention, what else can't you do?
Right. The text connects this back to the consensus collapse string in that puppet master image. We are moving from the individual psyche to the shared reality. How does a society of fragmented selves affect our ability to even communicate with each other?
Well, Thornberry argues that attention is the bedrock foundation of moral perception.
Okay, break that down. Moral perception.
To discern what is true, what is good, and what is just requires sustained, patient engagement with reality. You simply cannot make an accurate moral judgment about a complex geopolitical conflict or a highly nuanced social issue based on a 3-second contextless video clip or a short post.
But that's exactly how we get our news now.
It is. But when our attention is permanently divided, our perception becomes inherently shallow. Complex, multi-layered realities are aggressively reduced to contextless fragments.
And the essay calls this epistemic instability. And knowing that epistemology is the philosophical study of how we know what we know, this means our very mechanism for acquiring truth is destabilized.
Yes, the very ground we stand on to claim we know something is shaking.
Because our knowing is unstable, we are easily swayed by immediate, highly emotional impressions rather than grounded understanding. We just react to whatever string the puppet master plucks hardest in that moment.
And consider the most vital faculty we have for navigating moral complexity: the conscience.
Oh, this part of the essay was fascinating.
Thornberry points out a prerequisite for the conscience that we rarely, if ever, consider in the modern world. Conscience requires interior stillness. It requires a continuity of awareness.
It can't function in chaos.
No. The voice of conscience is not loud. It doesn't send you push notifications or vibrate in your pocket. It operates through a sustained apprehension of moral reality over time, not through fleeting reactive impressions.
There is a beautiful phrase in the text for this: the subtle but persistent call of conscience. But if your mind is filled with the deafening, constant noise of group chats, outrage cycles, algorithmic novelty, and endless feeds, that subtle voice doesn't stand a chance.
It gets completely drowned out by the roar of the immediate.
And the devastating result of that is our moral decision-making becomes entirely reactive. We aren't reflecting on our deeply held principles. We are just reacting to external pressures.
It's just bouncing around.
Exactly. We're bouncing from one emotional trigger to the next, like pinballs in a machine, confusing our quick outrage for actual moral conviction.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the civilizational stakes here are massive. Thornberry makes the case that a society composed primarily of fragmented individuals fundamentally cannot sustain coherent discourse. We cannot arrive at a shared moral consensus.
Because we don't even share the same reality anymore.
Right. If we literally do not have the biological or psychological attention span to sit with a complex argument, to consider nuance, to read beyond a headline, to engage in sustained dialogue with someone who vehemently disagrees with us, how can we possibly solve massive societal problems?
The grim answer is that we can't.
We really can't. If we can't pay attention, we can't share a reality. We end up living in that shattered mirror from the image we discussed earlier.
Everyone just trapped in their own little shard of glass?
Yes. Everyone becomes isolated in their own little jagged shard of perception, entirely convinced that their fragment is the whole world, unable to see the broader picture, and entirely unable to communicate with the person standing in the shard right next to them.
Man, the attention crisis isn't just about productivity dropping at work or feeling a bit scattered on a Sunday afternoon. It is about the erosion of the basic cognitive conditions required for a functional, democratic society.
It's an existential threat to how we live together.
Okay, this is heavy. It's incredibly sobering. We have walked through the misdiagnosis of the dopamine detox. We've explored the ontological nature of the fragmented self. We've looked at the external architecture of interruption, and we've mapped out the collapse of shared moral reality.
We've gone pretty deep into the problem.
We are at the absolute bottom of the deep dive here, but Thornberry does not leave us here in the dark with the digital puppet master, right? The entire final section of the essay is dedicated to the reconstitution of the self, the path to recovery.
Which is so crucial. And crucially, Thornberry insists that if the problem's ontological, if it is a crisis of our very state of being, the solution must be ontological as well.
Right. We can't just slap a Band-Aid on it.
Exactly. We cannot use mere productivity techniques to fix an existential fracture. We can't just buy a more expensive app blocker or switch to a dumb phone or set a screen time limit and expect our souls to miraculously heal. We have to fundamentally reorder our orientation toward reality.
Okay, so how do we do that? The text outlines 5 specific principles for this reconstitution. Now, our goal right now is to translate these lofty philosophical principles into specific daily exercises for the listener.
Let's get practical.
Yes, I don't want a philosophy lecture here. I want to know how you actually practice sustained presence in a world designed to distract you. We need to contrast these ontological practices directly with the shallow productivity hacks we are also used to.
I agree. Let's dive into the practical application.
Okay, principle 1 is telos over technique. The essay states, attention must be directed toward meaningful ends. Without a clear orientation toward truth and goodness, efforts to control attention remain arbitrary.
So we're back to that word, telos.
Right, and defining a telos sounds great in a philosophy classroom, but practically, am I supposed to give myself a grand pep talk about my ultimate life purpose every single time I open up an Excel spreadsheet? That seems exhausting. How do we actually do this?
It's a very fair question, and no, it's not about giving yourself a sweeping speech for every mundane task. Let's look at the productivity hack version first.
Okay.
The hack is simply setting a 30-minute timer on your social media app. That's a technique.
Yeah.
It has no soul, no direction. It's just a wall.
Right, it's just a restriction.
The ontological exercise is actively defining why you are focusing before you engage. It's asking yourself, what is the ultimate end, the telos, of this current action?
So applying it to the spreadsheet.
Yes. Before you open your laptop to work, take literally 10 seconds to mentally state the purpose. I am directing my attention to this difficult project to provide for my family, or to create something of value for my community, or to understand this complex topic deeply.
Oh, I see.
You have to anchor the attention to a meaningful why, so that it isn't easily swept away by the very first moment of boredom. It transforms the work from a mechanical task into an act of purposeful engagement.
That makes a lot of sense. It's giving your attention a destination, rather than just putting speed limits on the road. If you know you are driving to a specific, important place, you are much less likely to take random exits just because a billboard looks shiny.
Exactly. The destination pulls you forward.
So if we've successfully anchored our attention to a meaningful purpose, what happens when we inevitably log on to Twitter or our email and suddenly feel the urge to act completely out of character, because that feels like the next immediate barrier? We have a purpose, but we still get pulled into the mud.
Which leads us perfectly to principle 2, cultivating interior unity.
Okay, cultivate interior unity. Thornberry writes, the self must be reintegrated. This involves aligning thought, desire, and action under a coherent framework of meaning.
Think back to the shattered mirror again. Because of the architecture of the internet, we often allow ourselves to be completely different people depending on the app or the environment we are currently inhabiting.
Oh man, this is so true.
Right. We have our polished, highly professional LinkedIn persona. We have our combative, argumentative Twitter persona. We have our idealized, aesthetically perfect Instagram persona. And then we have who we actually are when we are sitting on the couch with our families.
It's exhausting just thinking about managing all those avatars.
Cultivating interior unity is the daily, rigorous habit of auditing yourself. Are your thoughts, your desires, and your actions aligned? Or are you living a scattered, compartmentalized life?
So what's the daily exercise for this?
The practical exercise is to strive for consistency across all domains. When you feel the urge to post a snarky comment online that completely contradicts the values of patience and kindness you hold in your private life, you have to recognize that urge as an act of fragmentation, and you have to stop.
That is incredibly difficult, but it makes so much sense. It's about consciously pulling those disparate shards back into a single reflection. You cannot be whole if you are actively performing 4 different versions of yourself, depending on which app is open.
You just fracture yourself further.
But the friction is real. Let's say you are trying to be unified. You're trying to focus on a telos. The urge to switch tabs, to check the feed, to escape the work. I mean, it physically hurts sometimes to resist it.
It does. It's almost like a muscle cramp in your brain.
Which leads to principle 3, resistance to interruption. The text says we must actively resist the architecture of interruption, quote, not merely by removing stimuli, but by cultivating the capacity for sustained presence.
This is a vital distinction from the dopamine detox model we talked about at the beginning.
Because the detox is just hiding the phone.
Exactly. The detox says the phone is bad, lock it in a drawer so you aren't tempted. It relies entirely on environmental control. But this ontological principle says, leave the phone on the desk and practice the physical and mental muscle of ignoring it.
Oh, that sounds like torture.
It is at first. The specific exercise here is learning to sit with the acute discomfort of boredom or frustration.
So when I hit a wall at work,
Right. When you are reading a dense book or trying to write a difficult email and you hit a point of friction, your brain will practically scream at you to switch tabs. It wants a quick hit of novelty to soothe the frustration.
It wants the easy out.
The practice is to acknowledge that urge, to literally feel it in your body, recognize it as the learned discomfort of stillness, and intentionally choose to push through it. You are rehabilitating your attention span like an atrophied muscle.
I really love that analogy. You don't get stronger by avoiding heavy weights. You get stronger by lifting them. You don't build a robust attention span by hiding in a cabin in the woods devoid of all distractions. You build it by encountering the distraction in your daily life and actively choosing your focus anyway.
Exactly. You build the resilience internally.
But what about the noise itself? Even if we resist the phone, our minds are still so loud.
Which brings us to principle 4, which the essay frames in a way I found deeply moving. The rehabilitation of silence.
Yes, Thornberry writes, silence is not the absence of activity, but the condition for perception. It allows reality to disclose itself without distortion.
I want to emphasize this principle heavily because our modern society has practically pathologized silence.
We really have. We hate it.
We treat silence as an awkward void, as empty time that must immediately be filled with a podcast, a YouTube video, an audiobook, or just background music.
I mean, I can't even fold laundry without putting something on.
Most people can't. But silence is the canvas upon which reality is painted. If the canvas is already covered in chaotic, vibrating neon paint, you can't see the subtle picture being drawn.
So what's the practice? Just sitting there?
Yes. The daily exercise here is deliberately carving out periods of pure, unadulterated stillness. No digital input, no reading, not even journaling. Just sitting in a room or walking outside in nature without headphones.
Just letting it be quiet.
It's allowing your agitated mind to finally settle. It is allowing the fragmented pieces of your attention to fall to the floor so that you can actually hear that quiet, subtle voice of conscience we discussed earlier.
It's terrifying the first time you try it, honestly. If you haven't sat in pure silence for 10 minutes in a decade, the first 3 minutes feel like a panic attack. Your brain throws every anxious thought it can at you to get you to turn the noise back on.
It fights back.
But if you push through it, it is deeply, profoundly restorative. And finally, how do we lock all of this into place? Principle 5, moral anchoring. The essay states, attention must be grounded in an objective moral order. Without this anchor, it becomes susceptible to fragmentation and manipulation.
Because if you are not anchored to a solid moral foundation, a deeply held commitment to truth, to virtue, and to objective reality, you are simply floating in the digital wind. And if you are floating, the digital puppet master will inevitably grab you.
So how do we drop the anchor?
The practical exercise here is grounding your daily attention in what is objectively good. It is a daily commitment to seeking truth over seeking social validation.
That's a hard pivot for a lot of people.
It means when you consume information, you evaluate it not by how many likes it has, or how much viral outrage it generates, or how well it confirms your existing biases, but by whether it actually aligns with objective truth and human dignity. It is an active defense mechanism against the architecture of interruption.
So if we take a step back and look at the whole picture, when we put these 5 principles into practice, choosing telos over technique, fighting for interior unity, building resistance and interruption, committing to the rehabilitation of silence, and establishing moral anchoring, what does it actually build? Where does this path lead us?
This brings us to the final visual source in our stack.
Right, the logo for Love Life Light Publishing, the imprint associated with the text.
It is a remarkably simple, elegant pencil sketch. It shows a heavy, ancient-looking stone archway or doorway. And through the archway, there's just a bright, blank, open space.
Just pure light.
It stands in such stark, beautiful contrast to the violent chaos of the shattered mirror and the dark, manipulative strings of the puppet master.
It really is the perfect concluding image for this discussion, because the ultimate goal of Thornberry's essay, the ultimate highest purpose of human attention, is what the text beautifully calls the disclosure of reality.
Yes. the disclosure of reality.
Reconstituting the self, doing the hard daily work to heal your fragmented mind, is like walking through that stone threshold. You are moving out of the dark, chaotic room of broken mirrors and manipulative algorithms, and you are stepping through the archway into the clear, unmediated light of unified understanding.
That's it, exactly. At its highest level, attention is the very mechanism by which reality reveals itself to you. If your eyes are constantly darting around, if you're constantly looking down at a screen, if your internal world is perpetually fragmented, you never see the whole picture.
You never see the doorway.
You never even see the doorway, let alone walk through it. To summarize Thornberry's incredibly powerful thesis, attention is not a productivity tool.
It's not about getting more done.
No, it is not something you optimize so you can churn out 30 more emails a day or cross more items off a to-do list. Attention is a profound moral and ontological necessity. It is the very ground of your conscience.
It's how we connect to what's real.
It is the absolute prerequisite for clarity, for empathy, and for wisdom. It is the only means by which you can genuinely encounter truth and connect with another human being. Any attempt to fix our modern distraction that doesn't recognize this profound reality is doomed to fail.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want you, listening right now, to think about how this plays out in your own life today. The next time you are standing in line at the coffee shop, or sitting on the couch while a movie plays, or waiting at a red light, and you feel that phantom itch.
That urge to reach for the phone.
Right, that sudden, urgent desire to reach into your pocket and pull out your phone to fill the quiet. Remember what is actually at stake in that tiny moment. You aren't just risking the loss of 3 minutes of productivity while you scroll, you are making an ontological choice.
You are choosing fragmentation over unity.
Yes. You are choosing to turn away from reality rather than doing the brave, difficult work of being fully present in it.
You are allowing the artificial noise to drown out the necessary stillness required to actually know yourself and to know the world around you.
Which leaves us with one final lingering thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. If Jamie Thornberry is right, and our undivided, unified attention is the only mechanism by which the deepest, most beautiful truths of reality are revealed to us, what version of the world is currently hiding in plain sight, just waiting for you to be still enough to see it?